All right. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Center for Budget, for inviting Jacqueline and me to join. So I will start off, and then I will hand it over to Jacqueline in the later part of the presentation. Well, good day, happy Thursday, tax time, which is, or maybe happy almost Friday, might be a better greeting to everyone. So I want to start with just a brief introduction because there might be folks who don't know about us. So Tim started to talk a little bit, but well, I think most people probably know the AARP, the membership. Jacqueline and I, with the foundation, which is a separate entity, we're sort of like the social impact arm, if you will. And our big mission, is Tim alluded to, is to serve vulnerable folks, especially those above age 50. And there are sort of like a few pillars that we focus on. Certainly the benefits program, including the work that Tim just described, is one of them, as well as food security and social connectedness. So just give you a sense of what we focus on. And Jacqueline will talk more, but part of a big flagship program for us is this tax aid program, which has been around for quite some time, as you can see on the screen there. And it's a national program, where we benefit from having, 25,000+ people across the different parts of the country, over almost 3,300 tax sites to help, especially, low-income older adults be able to file their taxes and claim their refunds. So that's a little bit about who we are. And Tim, if you go to the next slide. So I will start just to give you a snapshot of the outreach work that we're doing at the foundation. And then I'll hand it over to Jacqueline to share with you some of the recent data that we've gotten in terms of, from this current tax season. So maybe this image is a good one to start because it gives you a sense of like the target audience that we're trying to serve. So a good place to start is to share with you that in addition to the short-term goal of like increasing the number of tax filers among EITC eligible older workers, especially with the new expansion that Tim was alluding to, one of our really key goals in medium and longer terms is to enhance the efficiency of community-based organizations so that we can bridge, our ability to engage with older workers and actually getting them to tax filing so that they can claim EITC benefits. And one of the things that we're finding out through our current outreach work, as well as some of the grant work that we're doing, is that this image here you see in some way is very indicative of the type of people that we're trying to serve. Many of the older workers are filing as single households, and quite a majority are women in doing, quote unquote, odd jobs or self-employed, usually, as you know, from the literature that, from retail, from the service industry, like the restaurant workers that you see here. So one of the things that we want to do is, like I said, to try to build sort of like our learnings and gather data about what sort of things would affect behavior change among, a lot of the older adults, including those so-called non-filers that I think collectively as a group here that we're trying to reach. So in terms of the outreach work, one of the ongoing things that we're doing is that we're trying to, we're looking at a few different test markets and try to conduct a marketing outreach campaign where we're looking at both sort of like the analog channel as well as digital channel. By analog, I mean, the good old fashioned marketing, and in our case, trying to direct people to a call center or digitally direct them to a local landing page. And the goal there is to engage and really find leads so that we can give them information about the access to EITC, some of the basic understanding of eligibility and requirements, and then more importantly, direct them to a place where they can get tax assistance. And when we do outreach, one of the things that we try to do is, measure sort of like things like promotional reach, ad engagement, the normal things that you have typically see in terms of these metrics, likes, comments, click-through rates. And I will be upfront and say that part of the engagement is really trying to connect all the way through and to be able to track people receiving actual help and actually carrying out their tax filing. And that's something that's still ongoing. And part of our campaign is, like I said, not only looking at the short term, and actually we right now are in the process of trying to think about the next phase as well. And a big part of our strategy focuses on how do we change the narrative, if you will, and to transition from kind of a once-a-year tax season into a long-term engagement beyond the tax season, so we can begin to build the sort of like trust that people need to engage with EITC so they can claim benefits, not just during this tax season where this obviously is an important issue. So one of the things I can share in our ongoing campaign is that so far, through both analog and digital means, we've collected at least in the 3 test markets in Houston, Columbia, South Carolina, and Albuquerque, about 1,200 leads. And one of the things we're trying to do in the next phase with those leads is to look at more individual level survey so we can better understand the sort of barriers people face and figure out, like I said, in the next phase, how would we localize referrals, resources, and sort of like develop a strategy around what we typically hear also in the literature is kind of a warm handoff, right? Really paying attention to the local navigation we know that's required from the data we've seen so far, especially among older workers, to get people over the barriers, by providing really hands-on and a more customized approach to how we can help them navigate the tax filing system, which Jacqueline will talk about in a bit. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Tim. And then before I hand it over to Jacqueline, I'll share that in terms of like our outreach effort, we also are integrating our effort with the grantees that we're working with. So in this current year, right now, we're supporting 3 grantees in 3 different locations. And one of the things that we're learning in this year, and maybe not surprising to the folks on the call here, which is that the amount of returns and the amount of EITC refunds we're getting so far in different parts of the country are well ahead of last year's pace. And what's interesting is that we're finding out that depending on the segments that we're serving, for example, in one of our grantees supporting Asian American groups in the Philadelphia area, the issue of EITC awareness, although is important, what turns out that matters even more is there's a lack of understanding about basic tax laws, right? And a lot of that comes from the fact that there's a language barrier that prevent a lot of people from having sort of like the basic understanding in terms of what the obligations are, in terms of filing tax. So there's a lot of misconceptions about who has to file, who should get a refund. Where in other parts of the country, like in South Carolina, when we have a large African-American populations, the awareness is still an issue. But what's interesting is that we're starting to see signs and glimpses of people, older workers, picking up, like I said, different sort of like, odd jobs to, in many cases, to support family members. And because of this work, it turns out that they're entitled to the expanded EITC benefits that Tim alluded to earlier this year, that was passed last year. So those are some of the early learnings, and we're certainly we're still looking at the data and figuring out, like I said, how do we take some of these learnings and build this longer term strategy of be able to build this long-term engagement with the folks in these test markets and beyond. And A good handoff here to Jacqueline would be just to raise your attention to the sort of call to action that we're trying to generate. And this is really in full acknowledgement that a lot of the folks that we're trying to serve, as much as we like to get them help in terms of filing their taxes, we know also that a lot of low-income families either do file tax on their own, even though it's a struggle. So we include that as an option in our call to action, as well as in many cases paying a service provider, right, to file their taxes. So in our effort to really expand the reach, not only of older workers, and thinking about the non-filers, we want to look at a longer term strategy where we have to include all of these different ways that people are servicing, when people are reaching for help in order to file their taxes. So that's a perfect send off to Jackie Lynn, who will get into these different service delivery models and then share with you some of the data that the tax aid team have learned so far in this tax season. Jackie Lynn, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Dad. So as Dad mentioned, we have a number of service delivery models that we've offered this year. So at a high level, TaxAid offered in-person and virtual services. Here you will see that our models included in-person, which is our traditional way of doing business, in addition to drop-off, virtual, remote FSA, which is our coaching model, and a mixed model as well. What is not reflected here is that we also provide an option for people to do self-preparation. And so we use a product from the Free File Alliance for that. Reflected in this chart gives you an idea of the number of federal returns prepared using each of the models. As you can see, the drop-off model was very popular, and with nearly 400,000 returns that were already prepared as of April the 4th. Followed by the sites that use the mixed model approach. Then we have our virtual model culminating at over 42,000 federal returns prepared. And keep in mind our virtual model includes several subsets. So we have what we call a 1-scan model and a 2-scan model, as well as a no-scan model. So all of those are basically reflected underneath the virtual solution. And then bringing up the rear, which didn't get reported, is our other model for self-prep. But then in addition to that, we have our remote FSA, which we call alternative tax prep internally. As a result of all of the efforts of the volunteer base, as of April the 4th, the TaxAid program has served over 910,000 people. This is a critical number for AARP Foundation and AARP enterprise-wide. We do count every single person served. So those that are filing jointly, we count those as 2 individuals being served. So that's why it's not a one-to-one when you start looking at the number of federal returns that have actually been accepted. So again, nearly 673,000 federal returns and 527,000 state returns have been accepted. Of those, 103,500 federal returns were also included the earned income tax credit. The program was also able to collectively put nearly $753 million back into the hands of taxpayers, of which included 118 million that was EITC. Over the next few slides, you will see more information regarding the AGI, comparison charts on federal refunds, EITC refunds, and population served. Now, as you move to the next slide, it is important that we determine how well we are reaching the foundation's target audience, which is the LI 50+. So based on the results I shared earlier, that was over 54% of those that we served. But as a program, we have a goal to increase that number up to 65% by 2026. This is an ambitious goal, but this is one of the reasons why we have a number of the program promotion and marketing efforts in place that Dat has mentioned, and we will continue doing some of those efforts moving forward. On this chart and others that will follow, you'll see that we place age groups in certain segments. This year, due to the expansion of the EITC, we segmented taxpayers 65 plus, the 19 to 24 age group, and age 18, and those under 18 because of the expansion of the earned income tax credit. For all taxpayers served by the program, the average AGI, as you can see, is nearly $33,000. And so through this heat map, the darker the field, the more that's the highest average income amount by age. So you can see that pretty clearly within that chart. For all taxpayers served by the program, again, the average AGI was nearly 33,000, while the average AGI for the low-income population, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, is at 16,871, with those on the 25 to 49 age bracket having a higher average income than other age groups. As I work through the projects with my team every year, I encourage them to push the needle year over year. And you will see that demonstrated through the federal returns comparison on the next slide. We have set a 6-year strategic plan for the organization with key targets that we need to reach. Here you can see in the red column our cumulative target of federal returns prepared, which is set to complete by the end of Q2. And so that's marked at over 637,000 returns. And in the purple column, we have exceeded that by 35,000 returns already. So our program is really moving forward with ensuring that more and more people get served this year. And so when you compare that to last year, around the same time, there were only 428,000 returns that were prepared. Now that we know where we stand with federal returns as of April the 4th, let's look at the refund comparisons year over year. On the next slide, on the left-hand side of the chart, again, we highlight the federal refunds to all taxpayers. And on the right-hand side, you will see a chart that highlights the LI 50 plus refund amount. Similarly, we see that we are on track to reach or exceed the nearly $815 million target that was set for the program. And we have surpassed the results achieved in the previous year during the same time period. On the right, you will notice that we have already exceeded the set target for the refund amount established for the LI 50 plus as well. Following on the next slide, we provide the target and the year-to-year comparison for the EITC refunds only. For the overall population, $118 million have been leveraged, far exceeding our Q2 target and what was achieved this time last year. Now we know that much of this is due to the increase in the EITC coupled with the expansion of the EITC as well, especially for those that are 65 and older. As we review the LI 50 plus EITC amounts highlighted on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that it definitely aligns with the exponential level of impact that we have seen for all of the taxpayers. So then moving forward, another concentration that we have as a program is to increase the level of services in the African American, Black, and Hispanic Latinx communities. As you can see here, we consider both all taxpayers served on the left-hand side and the LI 50 plus audience is served on the right. And in both cases, all of the audiences are doing well. However, all are also trailing behind their white counterparts. Efforts are underway to get laser focus on these other communities so we can increase the level of impact. However, it should be recognized that within nearly each group, this year, more federal refunds were leveraged compared to last year, with the exception of the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander group, as you can see on the chart. This is primarily due to the number of sites and volunteers that's in our volunteer base stationed in Hawaii. So we had fewer sites operating this year in that particular area and fewer volunteers that were able to support the sites. But there is work ahead trying to bring that number of service level back up in the future years. So following is more information on the federal refund, the average amount by age, and other information. So as we see here, those that fall within the 25 to 49 age group, as noted on the heat map, are low income, receive the higher federal refund amount, followed by those taxpayers in the 18 to 24 age group, and later by those that are within the 50 to 64 age group. Based on the data, many within the 24 to 49 age group are filing head of household, married filing jointly, and reportedly have dependents and qualifying relatives who qualify for both the EITC and the child tax credit. Another thing to note is that when we looked at our data, the majority of the folks that were served actually already received the EIP. So that did not necessarily contribute to the overall refund amount for many of the taxpayers that we serve because they already received their EIP in 2021. So as we continue to look into the data further, you can see here again this information for the federal EITC year-over-year comparison by age group. No matter if we look at the overall age group on the left or the low income served by age group, you can see that at every level, the dollars leverage far exceeded the 2021 tax season. Again, the 2021 tax season is reflected in that orange or rust color, and then the 2021 tax season is in the blue. You will also notice that we included information about those who are 18 years of age, who collectively leveraged $10,000 in EITC this season. All the results here are due to several facets moving in the right direction. One, COVID trends have lowered, which has positioned more taxpayers to leverage tax services in person and utilize our drop-off models. And then, of course, intentional program promotion efforts by Dad and his team and other members of the AARP Foundation has also supported this. And of course, because of the expansion and the increase of the EITC. On the next slide, we'll spend a little bit of time walking through the federal EITC average amount by age. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but again, this chart reflects the federal EITC average amount by age, which by far the largest age demographic benefiting again is that age 25 to 49 years. And it drops significantly for those that are 50 and older, with the average being approximately 31% of the average amount received by those that were 25 through 49. Finally, on the next slide, we demonstrate in this slide the federal EITC year-to-year comparison by race and ethnicity. So similar to the overall federal refund amounts, we see here that the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander group leveraged fewer EITC dollars compared to the prior year. However, the other groups far exceeded the amounts leveraged in the prior year. Again, this data tracks with the number of sites and volunteers that we have available this season in various markets. So in closing, we are extremely delighted to see that the value of refunds have increased for not only all taxpayers served via AARP Foundation tax aid, But also, we know that by helping the taxpayers maximize their refund, by connecting them to the resource that they need, they will be able to take care of all of their, or all, or some of their essential needs. As we move forward, my team will continue to dig deeper into our data to pull out various insights about the EITC and metrics. And as our tax season ends, we will be reviewing our taxpayer satisfaction survey, which is analyzed over the summertime. And we'll find out more about their experiences and how they use their actual refund. Further, we will be launching a competitive grant geared to organizations and coalitions that prepare tax returns, with a focus on securing tax refunds for low-income taxpayers who are 50 and older, with a goal to help the older adults leverage those refunds. We will announce the grant opportunity in early May through various national entities, including CBPP, Prosperity Now, the EITC Funders Network, and many others. So we encourage you to look out for this grant opportunity that will be released early in May of 2022. Thank you, guys.